Welcome to The Explainer. We're all about breaking down big, complex ideas into something you can really sink your teeth into. And today, we're jumping into the ancient book of Joshua to pull out some incredible lessons on leadership, faith, and, well, making the right choices. So let's start with a question. What does it really take to follow a legend? Imagine having to step up and fill the shoes of, one of the most famous leaders in history. That's a ton of pressure, right? Well, that's exactly where our story kicks off. Okay, so the text drops us right into this massive challenge. Picture this: the nation of Israel has been wandering in the desert for 40 years. Their larger-than-life leader, Moses, is gone, and now it's all on his number two, Joshua, to finish the job. And what's the job? Oh, just, lead a whole nation of former slaves to conquer a land filled with walled cities and tough enemies. Yeah, no pressure at all. So where do you even start with a mission like that? Really? Well, the first thing we see in the text is a very specific set of instructions given to Joshua. You could almost think of it as his mandate, his blueprint for what's about to happen. And what's interesting is this isn't really about battle tactics or being a clever politician. The source makes it super clear that Joshua's recipe for success is, first and foremost, a spiritual one. It boils down to three core things: strength, courage, and an unwavering, absolute obedience to the law they'd been given. And this quote is so key. Listen to this phrase: do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left. That's not just poetic language. The text is highlighting this idea of complete, total dependence. It's saying, hey, this isn't about finding some clever loophole or a middle path. Nope. Success is literally tied to following the game plan exactly as it's laid out. No wiggle room. All right, so let's see how this all plays out in the real world, because Joshua's leadership and his whole idea of faith gets tested right away. And interestingly, the first big tests aren't these huge epic battles. Instead, we see two really foundational events that basically set the tone for everything to come. So the story gives us these two incredible and kind of contrasting stories of faith. First, you've got Rahab. She's a total outsider, right? She's not even an Israelite, and she's living in the enemy city, Jericho. But she risks her own life to hide these spies, all based on stories she's heard about their God. Then you have the entire nation of Israel. They're asked to do something that sounds completely crazy: just walk into a flooding river and trust that it's going to part for them. And Rahab's story is just a brilliant illustration of this theme of being, surprised by grace. It just goes to show that faith isn't something that's only for a certain type of person or a certain community. It can pop up in the most unexpected places, from people that society might have totally written off. And because of her faith, her entire family is saved. So what happens with the river? Well, just like they were told, the second the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant step into the Jordan, the water just stops. The whole nation walks across on dry ground. It's a huge miracle. But the text is clear: this couldn't just be a good story to tell later. They were commanded to create a physical, tangible reminder of what just happened. And this is so important. They were told to take 12 stones right out of the middle of the dry riverbed and set them up as a memorial. Why? Well, the purpose was super practical. It was so that down the road, when their kids would see this pile of rocks and ask, "Hey Dad, what's up with these stones?" they'd have a perfect opportunity to tell the story all over again. It's about making history something you can touch, making sure that this incredible moment was never, ever forgotten. Okay, so the people are finally across the river. And now we're getting into the central conflict of the whole story: the battle for the land. And first up on the list is the legendary, supposedly unconquerable city of Jericho. So check out the battle plan they're given for Jericho. It's unconventional, to say the least. There are no catapults, no battering rams, no stealth missions. The entire strategy is to just march around the city for 7 days. Seriously, the whole thing is framed not as a brilliant military move, but as this test of pure obedience. They just had to trust a plan that made absolutely no logical sense. And guess what? It worked. The walls came tumbling down. You'd think after a victory like that, a city's walls just falling down, they'd be unstoppable, right? On a total roll. But that's not what happened. The momentum just dies. Their very next fight against a way smaller, weaker city called Ai is a complete and total disaster, a humiliating defeat. They get routed. So what on earth went wrong? And this is where the text introduces this really powerful idea: the enemy within. The defeat at Ai wasn't because of a bad battle plan. It was because of a breakdown in integrity.
See, one person, a man named Achan, had secretly disobeyed a direct order. He took some of the forbidden loot from Jericho for himself. And his private, personal action had devastating public consequences for the entire community. It just shows how deeply their success was tied to their obedience.
So, the big takeaway from all these battles, the wins and the losses, is this central idea. When Israel won, like in a crazy battle later on where the sun literally stands still in the sky, it was because God was fighting on their side. The sources drive this point home again and again. Their victories weren't just about human strategy or strength, they were about divine intervention. Okay, so after the major fighting is done, the whole vibe of the story starts to shift. We move from scenes of battle and conquest to the nitty-gritty of settling the land and, finally, seeing a promise that was made centuries ago actually come true. And this verse right here is really the anchor for this whole part of the book. It's like a final summary, a look back that says, hey, you know all those good things God promised to Israel? Not a single one failed. Every single one came to pass. It's all about underscoring this idea of absolute faithfulness over, a really, really long time. And if you want a perfect example of what this kind of enduring faith looks like, the text points us to Caleb. Now remember him. He and Joshua were the only two of the original 12 spies 40 years earlier who came back with a good report. He had what the text calls a different spirit. He trusted when everyone else was terrified. And now, as an old man, he finally gets the piece of land he was personally promised all those decades ago. It's just a powerful picture of faithfulness being rewarded over the long haul. So, how does this epic story end? Well, it's not with Joshua's death, and it's not with one last big battle. Instead, it concludes with his final and maybe most important challenge to the people he's led for so long. Yeah, after this whole lifetime of struggle, of miracles, of victories, Joshua's entire legacy kind of gets boiled down into this one incredibly powerful speech. He gets everyone together, he reminds them of their history, all the good and the bad, and then he puts a choice squarely in front of them. And this is one of the most famous lines in the entire book. He says, "Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." It frames this idea of loyalty not as something you're just born into or a decision you make once. No, it's a deliberate, conscious choice you have to make every single day. He doesn't force them, he challenges them, and then he leads by example, making his own choice crystal clear. And really, that's where this whole explainer has to end, with that same ultimate question of choice and commitment. Because what we see here is that the story of Joshua isn't just some ancient history about battles and land. It's a story that challenges every one of us to think about the choices we're making right now that are defining our own legacy.